The citadel of Accord floated in the darkness of space like a small moon. It was the largest structure ever built by living beings. Millions of aliens from hundreds of different species lived and worked inside its metal walls. For 10,000 years, this place had been the center of galactic politics. Every important decision was made here. Every war was started or stopped within its grand halls. Ambassador stood at the window of her small quarters and looked out at the stars. She was 52 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and tired lines around her dark eyes. She had spent 20 years of her life in diplomatic service. 20 years of smiling at creatures who looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow everything would change. Her assistant, a young man named David, entered the room with a tablet in his hands. His face was pale. "The agenda for tomorrow's session just arrived," he said. "It's bad, Ambassador, really bad." Did not turn from the window. "Tell me." "The Conquered has decided to redistribute the colonies. They want us to give up 5 of our 7 worlds. They say the land is wasted on a young species like us." Closed her eyes. The expanse had been humanity's greatest achievement. 50 years ago, humans had found 7 dead rocks floating in space. Through blood, sweat, and tears, they had turned those rocks into living worlds. Millions of humans had worked their entire lives to build cities, plant forests, and create oceans where none had existed before. And now the Galactic Conquered wanted to take it all away. "What compensation are they offering?" she asked. David laughed bitterly. "Mining rights on 2 asteroid belts, that's it. The asteroids are nearly empty. We checked." Finally turned from the window. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Schedule a quantum call with Earth. Priority 1. I need to speak with the Secretary General tonight." The Galactic Conquered had ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy for millions of years. It was made up of 12 ancient species who called themselves the Elder Races. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They had built empires when humans were learning to make fire. 3 species held the most power in the Conquered. There were insect-like creatures with hard shells and clicking mandibles. They thought in terms of hives and swarms. Individual life meant nothing to them. Only the collective mattered. There were beings made of living crystal. They were cold, logical, and believed themselves to be the most intelligent species in existence. They were the oldest of all. They were massive creatures who lived in the clouds of gas giant planets. No one knew exactly what they looked like. They communicated through deep vibrations that could shake buildings. These 3 species had welcomed humanity into the Conquered 80 years ago, but welcomed was not the right word. They had tolerated humanity. They had allowed humans to sit at the table, but never to speak. They had smiled at human ambassadors while stealing human ideas and exploiting human labor. Remembered her first day at the Citadel 20 years ago. She had been so hopeful then. She had believed that humanity could earn respect through hard work and good deeds. She had been a fool. The quantum link connected, and the face of Secretary General appeared on the screen. She was an elderly woman with white hair and sharp eyes. Behind her sat the members of Earth's ruling council, their faces grim. "Ambassador," the Secretary General said, "we have seen the Conquered's proposal. What is your assessment?" Took a deep breath. "They don't see us as equals, Madam Secretary. They never have. This isn't about the colonies. This is about showing the galaxy that humans can be pushed around without consequences. If we give in now, they will take everything from us, piece by piece, year by year, until we have nothing left." The council members whispered among themselves. General Cole, the commander of Earth's military forces, leaned forward. He was a large man with scars on his face and steel in his voice. "The intelligence reports support the ambassador's view," he said. "We have intercepted communications between Conquered members. They see humanity as a resource to be harvested. Our people, our worlds, our technology. They plan to take it all eventually. The only question is how fast." Secretary General was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with the weight of history. For 80 years, we have tried to be good members of the galactic community. We have shared our medicine. We have shared our art. We have sent our engineers to help repair alien ships and our farmers to help feed alien worlds. We asked for nothing but fairness in return. She paused. And what have we received? Contempt, theft, humiliation. She stood up from her chair. The other council members stood with her. I am tired of begging, Ambassador. I am tired of watching humanity bow its head and accept abuse. If the conquered wants our colonies, they will have to take them by force, and they will learn that humans do not break easily. Felt her heart beating faster. What are your orders, Madam Secretary? You will deliver a message tomorrow, not a negotiation, not a request, a statement. Humanity is leaving the galactic conquered. We withdraw from all treaties, all agreements, all obligations. As of tomorrow, we stand alone. The weight of those words hung in the air. David looked terrified, felt something she had not felt in years, hope. There will be consequences, she said carefully. The conquered will not let us go quietly. Secretary General smiled. It was not a warm smile. Let them try to stop us. They think we are weak because we are young. They think we are helpless because we are kind. They have made a terrible mistake, Ambassador, and tomorrow they will begin to understand just how terrible. The communication ended, stood in silence for a long moment. David finally spoke. Ambassador, are we ready for this? Can we actually fight the conquered? Walked to her desk and picked up a small photograph. It showed her daughter, now grown, standing in a garden on one of the colonies. Behind her, children played under an artificial sun that human engineers had built. For 50 years, the conquered has taken our best scientists and engineers for cultural exchange programs, said. They thought we were giving them our knowledge. They were wrong. We were learning theirs. Every ship our people worked on, every system our people repaired, we studied it all. We improved it. We built something new. She set down the photograph and looked at David with eyes that burned with cold determination. The conquered thinks they know humanity. They have only seen the mask we chose to wear. Tomorrow we take off that mask, and the universe will tremble. That night walked through the grand halls of the Citadel. Alien diplomats passed her without a second glance. She was just another human, small, weak, unimportant. An emissary drifted close to her. Its massive form blocked out the light. Its voice was like thunder rolling through mountains. Little human, it said, your kind should be grateful we allow you at our table. Remember your place. Looked up at the ancient creature. She thought about all the years of insults, all the stolen technology, all the broken promises. She thought about her daughter's garden and the children playing under human-made suns. She smiled at it was not a kind smile. I know exactly where my place is, she said softly. Do you know yours? That made a sound of confusion. No human had ever spoken to it that way before. Walked on, leaving the ancient creature behind. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow, humanity would stop asking for respect. Tomorrow, humanity would demand it. The morning came slowly in the Citadel. There was no real sunrise in space, only the artificial lights that grew brighter to signal a new day. Had not slept. She had spent the night reading reports, reviewing speeches, and preparing herself for what was to come. She stood before a mirror in her quarters and adjusted her formal uniform. It was simple compared to the elaborate robes worn by other species. A dark blue jacket with silver buttons, a white shirt beneath, the flag of United Earth on her shoulder. Humans did not believe in showing off through clothing. They showed their worth through actions. David knocked on her door. Ambassador, it's time. The grand chamber is filling up. Took one final look at herself. The woman in the mirror looked calm. Inside, her heart was racing. Today she would change history. Today she would make enemies of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. She was terrified, she was ready. The grand chamber of Accord was the largest room had ever seen. It could hold over 12,000 beings at once. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Floating platforms carried diplomats to their assigned positions. Every species had their own section, designed to fit their physical needs. Humans sat in a small corner near the back. Their section could hold maybe 50 people, had brought only 10. It seemed fitting. They had never been given the space they deserved. The high speaker took its position at the center of the chamber. It was a massive creature, twice the size of a human, with 6 legs and 4 arms. Its shell was decorated with golden symbols that showed its rank. When it spoke, its mandibles clicked together in patterns that were translated by machines into every language in the galaxy. "This session of the Galactic Concord is now open," the High Speaker announced. "First matter of business, the redistribution of territories in the expanse." Murmurs filled the chamber. Many species were curious to see how the humans would react. Would they cry? Would they beg? The thought seemed to amuse many of the alien delegates. The High Speaker continued. "The Concord has determined that the colonies are not being used efficiently by their current occupants. As such, 5 of the 7 human worlds will be transferred to species better equipped to maximize their potential. The humans will receive compensation in the form of mining rights to the Theta asteroid belt." Felt David stiffen beside her. The Theta belt was worthless. Everyone knew it. This was not redistribution. This was theft dressed in formal language. "The human delegation may now respond," the High Speaker said. Its tone suggested that it expected a short speech of acceptance, perhaps with some tears. Rose from her seat. Her platform floated forward, carrying her toward the center of the chamber. Thousands of alien eyes turned to watch her. She felt their contempt like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders. She reached the speaking position and looked out at the assembly. So many species, so many ancient civilizations. They had ruled the stars for millions of years. They had seen countless young species rise and fall. And none of them had any idea what was about to happen. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Concord," began. Her voice was steady. "For 80 years, humanity has sat at this table. We have participated in your councils. We have followed your rules. We have offered friendship to any species willing to accept it." She paused and looked directly at the High Speaker. "We asked for nothing but fairness. We received nothing but contempt." The murmurs grew louder. This was not the meek acceptance they had expected. "When our scientists developed new medicines, the Concord seized them for the common good. Our people never saw a single credit in return. When our engineers were needed to repair hive ships, we sent them gladly, and they were kept as unpaid workers for years. When pirates operating from space raided our colonies, we appealed to this council for justice. We were told to be patient. We were told these things take time." The delegate flickered with irritation. Its crystalline body shifted colors from blue to angry red. "You dare accuse us?" "I state facts," cut in. Her voice was ice. "Facts that every species in this chamber knows to be true. The only question is whether anyone has the courage to acknowledge them." Silence fell over the grand chamber. No one had ever interrupted a delegate before. Continued, "You see our youth as weakness. You see our small territory as proof of our insignificance. You see our kindness as submission." She took a deep breath. "You have made a terrible mistake." The High Speaker clicked its mandibles in what might have been laughter. "And what will you do, little human? Fight us? You have 7 worlds. We have 7,000. Your fleet is smaller than our training squadrons. You have no power here." Smiled. "Power is not always measured in ships and worlds, High Speaker. Sometimes it is measured in will, in determination, in the refusal to accept injustice." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a single sheet of paper, old-fashioned, symbolic. She held it up for all to see. "I am authorized by the United Earth Government to make the following announcement. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from the galactic concord. We renounce all treaties, all trade agreements, all mutual defense pacts. We release all conquered citizens currently on human worlds and expect the same courtesy for humans in conquered space. The chamber erupted, thousands of voices speaking at once. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and somewhere beneath it all the first tiny seeds of fear. The high speaker raised its arms for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "You cannot do this," it said. "No species has ever left the conquered voluntarily. You will be alone, isolated. Your people will starve without access to galactic trade routes." "We will manage," replied. "Your colonies will be unprotected. Any species could attack you without fear of conquered intervention." "Let them try." The high speaker moved closer to. Its massive form towered over her. Any other human might have stepped back, stood her ground. "You are making a mistake, Ambassador. A mistake that will cost your species everything. Return to your seat. Accept the conquered's generous offer. There is still time to save your people from their own foolishness." Looked up at the ancient creature. For 80 years, humans had bowed before such threats. They had smiled and nodded and accepted whatever scraps were thrown to them. They had believed that patience and goodwill would eventually earn them respect. That time was over. "No," said simply. She turned to face the full assembly. Her voice rose to reach every corner of the massive chamber. "For too long, humanity has accepted the role you assigned us, the grateful newcomers, the harmless young species, the ones who should be thankful for whatever crumbs fall from the elder race's tables." Her eyes swept across the thousands of watching faces. "No more." She began walking toward the exit. Her small delegation rose and followed her. "You have built your empire on the belief that the young must bow to the old. You have forgotten something important about humans. We are not just young. We are hungry. We learn fast. We adapt faster. And when we are pushed into a corner," she paused at the chamber doors, "we push back." The doors began to open, delivered her final words. "In the coming days, you will learn what humanity truly is. You will learn what we have hidden behind our smiles. You will learn why, in all of human history, no enemy has ever managed to destroy us." She smiled that cold smile again. "And then, perhaps, you will wish you had treated us with respect when you had the chance." She walked out, the doors sealed behind her. For a long moment, the grand chamber was silent. Then, the laughter began. Thousands of alien voices finding humor in the audacity of the tiny species. They were still laughing when the first emergency reports began arriving. They stopped laughing very quickly after that. The laughter in the grand chamber died when the first alarm sounded. It was followed by a second, then a third. Within minutes, dozens of emergency signals were flooding into the citadel from every corner of conquered space. The high speaker's mandibles clicked frantically as it received reports from its hive commanders. Its calm superiority vanished, replaced by something that looked very much like fear. "This is impossible," it said. "This cannot be happening." And Diplomat rushed to the central platform, its crystal body flashing with urgent colors. "High Speaker, we have lost contact with our trading posts along the border, all 17 of them, in the last hour." "Lost contact? Were they attacked?" "No, they were surrounded. Human ships appeared from nowhere, hundreds of them. They are blocking all communication and transportation. Nothing can enter or leave." The chamber erupted in chaos once again, but this time there was no laughter, only confusion and growing terror. In the hours that followed, the true scale of humanity's hidden strength became clear. For 50 years, while smiling at diplomats and accepting insults, humans had been building. Deep beneath the surface of their colonies, away from conquered sensors, they had constructed shipyards, weapons factories, and training facilities. The 7 farming worlds were actually 7 hidden fortresses. The primitive, human fleet that the conquered had mocked for decades was a decoy. The real fleet had been hidden in hollowed-out asteroids and underground bases. When walked out of the Grand Chamber, she had sent a single coded message to Earth: release them. And they were released. Thousands of human warships emerged from hiding places across the galaxy. They were unlike anything the conquered had ever seen. Human engineers, during their years of voluntary service on alien vessels, had studied every piece of technology they could find. They had learned the strengths and weaknesses of every species' designs. Then they had gone home and built something better. The ships were sleek and fast, built for speed rather than display. They carried weapons that combined technologies from a dozen different species, improved by human innovation. Electromagnetic pulse generators that could disable entire fleets, gravity manipulation systems that could crush ships like paper, and something the first survivors would later call screaming light beams of energy that passed through shields as if they did not exist. But the human fleet did not attack. That was the most terrifying part. They simply moved into position at every critical point in conquered space: trade routes, resource stations, communication relays. They blocked nothing and destroyed nothing. They just sat there watching. The message was clear: we could end you whenever we choose. We are choosing not to, for now. On the Citadel, the conquered leadership held emergency meetings. They demanded immediate military action. The calculated odds and found them unfavorable. They remained silent, which was somehow more frightening than anything else. Meanwhile, the economic impact of humanity's withdrawal began to spread like a disease. For decades, human pharmaceutical companies had provided medicines that dozens of species depended on. They needed human-developed treatments to control certain parasites in their hive nurseries. They used human chemical solutions to maintain the clarity of their crystal forms. A dozen smaller species relied on human vaccines to survive diseases that would otherwise have wiped them out. All of those supplies stopped flowing overnight. Human engineers had designed and maintained life support systems on hundreds of space stations and colony ships. When they took their expertise with them. Within days, critical systems began failing across conquered space. Human agricultural techniques had transformed dozens of barren worlds into food producers. Without human advisors, crop yields began to fall. Food shortages spread from world to world. The conquered had never realized how deeply humanity had woven itself into the fabric of galactic civilization. They had seen humans as servants, as tools, as resources to be exploited. They had never noticed that those servants had become essential. Those tools had become irreplaceable. On the fourth day after the walkout, the Hive Council ordered a military response. They assembled a battle swarm of 10,000 ships, the largest fleet they had sent against any enemy in centuries. The swarm would travel to the nearest human colony and burn it to ash. This would teach the upstart species their place. The swarm entered the expanse with confidence. Warriors did not know fear. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had crushed 100 rebellions. One human colony would fall before them like grass before fire. They found the human fleet waiting for them. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 4 minutes. Human ships moved with impossible coordination, as if guided by a single mind. They flowed around the swarm like water around stones. The screaming light weapons cut through armor like it was not there. Electromagnetic pulses shut down engines and weapon systems. Gravity projectors crushed ships into balls of twisted metal. When it was over, the 10,000-ship swarm had been reduced to floating debris. Not a single human vessel had been scratched. The High Speaker received the news in silence. For the first time in its long life, it understood what it felt like to be prey. Across the galaxy, other species watched these events with very different emotions. Not everyone in the conquered had supported the elder race's rule. Many smaller species had suffered under aggression, economic manipulation, and indifference. They had been forced to accept their place in the hierarchy because they had no choice. Now they saw that choice might be possible after all. Secret messages began flowing to human communication channels. Species that had never dared to speak against the conquered reached out in hope. They asked questions that would have been unthinkable a week ago. Can we join you? Can you protect us? Can we build something better together? On Earth, Secretary General reviewed these messages with her council. General Cole stood beside her, his face unreadable. We have received formal alliance requests from 47 species, she said. More are coming every hour. The conquered is fracturing faster than our most optimistic projections. General Cole nodded slowly. The question is, what do we do with this opportunity? We could crush the elder races completely. We have the power now. Was quiet for a long moment. Through the window of her office, she could see the blue curve of Earth below. The planet where humanity had been born. The planet they had nearly destroyed through war and greed before learning, painfully, to be better. No, she said finally. Humanity did not build this strength to become conquerors. We built it because we were tired of being victims. There is a difference. She turned to face her council. We will accept these alliance requests. We will protect any species that asks for our help, but we will not become the new tyrants. We will build something the galaxy has never seen before, a community based on equality, not power, on respect, not fear. Cole frowned slightly. And if the elder races refuse to accept this new order, if they continue to attack us? His eyes hardened. Then we will defend ourselves, and we will win, but we will not strike first. We will not conquer, we will not enslave. That is not who humans are. That is not who we choose to be. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Ambassador was returning home. Somewhere out there, thousands of human ships stood ready to protect humanity's future. Somewhere out there, the old order was crumbling, and something new was being born. We wanted respect, said softly. We earned it through strength. Now we must prove we deserve it through wisdom. The council was silent. They all understood the weight of this moment. Humanity stood at a crossroads. They could become the very thing they had fought against, or they could become something greater. They chose to be greater. And across the galaxy, species who had known nothing but oppression began to hope that the universe might finally change. 6 months had passed since Ambassador walked out of the Grand Chamber. In that time, the galaxy had changed more than it had in the previous 10,000 years. The galactic conquered was dying, not from war but from abandonment. Species that had quietly suffered under elder race rule for centuries were leaving, one by one. They fled to human space, seeking protection and partnership. They brought their knowledge, their resources, and their hope. The Hive Council had fractured into warring factions. Some hives wanted to continue fighting humanity. Others argued for peace. A few even suggested that perhaps the humans had been right, perhaps the old ways needed to change. Civil war spread through space like wildfire. The crystalline empire cracked from within. Their cold logic had failed them. They had calculated that humanity would submit. They had calculated that their economic power would force compliance. Their calculations had been wrong, and they did not know how to handle being wrong. Ancient leaders were challenged. New factions emerged. Crystal shattered against crystal as old rivals settled old scores. They retreated into silence. Their gas giant had always been isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Now they sealed themselves away completely, refusing all communication. Some said they were ashamed. Others said they were planning something. No one knew for certain. Stood on the bridge of the human flagship Victory and watched the stars pass by. She was no longer just an ambassador. The new alliance had named her their first Secretary General. It was a title she had not wanted, but one she had accepted because there was no one else the scattered species trusted more. Her ship was traveling to the system, where a small aquatic species had requested emergency assistance. They in their death throes had attacked colonies to steal resources. They had no fleet, no weapons. They had only one hope: humanity. "Secretary General," said Captain from his command chair. He was a tall man with dark skin and kind eyes. "We're receiving a transmission from the leadership. They want to thank us again for coming." Smiled tiredly. "Tell them thanks are not necessary. This is what allies do." She looked around the bridge at her crew. Humans, yes, but also members of 17 other species who had joined the new alliance. An officer worked at the communication station, her blue-scaled hands moving gracefully over the controls. An engineer, a small mammalian species with large ears, monitored the engine systems. A warrior, tall, four-armed, and covered in ceremonial scars, stood guard at the door. This was what humanity had built. Not an empire, not a hierarchy, a community. The victory arrived in the system to find the attackers already in retreat. Word had spread through the galaxy. Human ships were coming. The fleet commanders, remembering what had happened to the battle swarm, decided that stolen resources were not worth certain death. They greeted their rescuers with singing. Their language was based on beautiful musical tones that rose and fell like waves. Through translators, their meaning was clear: gratitude, hope, and devotion to their new allies. Met with the high singer in a chamber filled with warm water and soft light. The leader floated before her, its body a shimmering mix of blue and silver. "We have lived in fear for so long," the high singer said, its voice creating gentle ripples in the water. "They took our children for their labor camps. They taxed us until our people starved. They ignored our pleas for help. We had accepted that this was our fate, to be small, to be weak, to be forgotten." Listened in silence. She had heard similar stories from dozens of species in the past months. The conquered had not been a community. It had been a system of exploitation disguised as civilization. "Then you came," the high singer continued. "Not to conquer, not to take, you came to help. You asked nothing in return except our friendship." Its voice rose into higher notes, expressing emotion that translation could not fully capture. "In 10,000 years of recorded history, no one has ever treated this way. You have given us something we never thought we would have." "And what is that?" asked. "Hope," the high singer sang. "You have given us hope." That night stood alone on an observation deck, looking out at the below. It was a beautiful planet, covered almost entirely by ocean, with scattered islands catching the light of 3 moons. David found her there. He had grown in the past 6 months. The nervous young assistant had become a confident diplomat in his own right. He had negotiated treaties, resolved disputes, and helped build the foundation of the new alliance. "You should sleep," he said. "Tomorrow will be busy." Did not turn from the window. "Do you remember what I told you, David, the night before the walkout? You said the universe would tremble." "I was wrong." She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were thoughtful, maybe even sad. "The universe did not tremble because of our weapons or our ships. It trembled because we showed them something they had never seen before." "What?" "Kindness with strength, power without cruelty, the ability to destroy your enemies and the choice not to." She looked back at the peaceful ocean below. "For 10,000 years the strong have ruled through fear. We are showing them another way." David was quiet for a moment. "Some people say we're being foolish, that we should crush the conquered completely while we have the chance, that leaving them weakened but alive is dangerous." "Those people may be right," admitted. "They may rebuild. They may find new schemes. They may emerge from their silence with terrible plans. We may face wars and betrayals and disasters we cannot imagine. Then why take the risk?" Smiled. It was a different smile than the cold one she had shown in the grand chamber. This one was warm, human, full of something that looked like faith. "Because the universe does not change through conquest. It changes through example, Every species that joins our alliance learns that strength does not require cruelty. Every child born in our territory grows up knowing that power can be used to protect, not just to dominate. She placed a hand on David's shoulder. We are not just building an alliance, David. We are planting seeds, seeds that will grow long after we are gone. In the months that followed, those seeds began to bloom. The new Terran Compact, as the alliance came to be called, grew faster than anyone had predicted. Species joined not because they feared human power, but because they believed in human values. Human doctors traveled to distant worlds to treat diseases. Human engineers helped build infrastructure on planets that had never known such technology. Human teachers opened schools where the children of 100 species learned side by side. It was not perfect. There were conflicts and misunderstandings. Old hatreds between species did not disappear overnight. Resources were sometimes scarce. Difficult decisions had to be made. But through it all, the compact held together. It held together because its members believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed that the universe could be better. They believed that the old ways of domination and exploitation were not the only ways. On Earth, Secretary General monitored the Alliance's growth with quiet satisfaction. She was old now, her health failing. She knew she would not live to see the full flower of what they had planted, but that was acceptable. Great works always outlived their creators. General Cole visited her often in those final months. He had become her closest advisor, her friend. He sat beside her bed and told her stories of the Alliance's victories, not battles won, but lives saved, worlds healed, hopes restored. "We did something impossible," he said one evening. "We changed the galaxy." Smiled weakly. "We did something harder than that. We changed ourselves. We had the power to become tyrants, and we chose to become teachers instead." She closed her eyes. "That is humanity's true victory, not what we did to others, what we became." She died peacefully that night, surrounded by friends from a dozen species. Her last words were a message for Ambassador, now leading the compact from the rebuilt citadel. "Tell the seeds are growing. Tell her to keep watering them." And did day by day, world by world, hope by hope. The universe had trembled when humanity left the negotiation table. Now it was beginning to heal. 10 years had passed since Ambassador walked out of the Grand Chamber. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The citadel of Accord still floated in the darkness of space, but it had been transformed. Where once the banners of the Galactic Concord had hung, now flew the flags of over 300 species united under the new Terran Compact. The grand halls that had witnessed centuries of oppression now echoed with the sounds of genuine cooperation. Secretary General walked through those halls for what she knew would be the last time. She was 62 years old now. Her hair had gone completely white. Her body was tired from years of endless work, but her eyes still burned with the same fire that had carried her through the darkest days of the struggle. Today was a special day. Today, the Compact would elect its second Secretary General, had refused to serve more than 2 terms. She believed in the principle that power should be shared, rotated, never concentrated in one person for too long, even if that person was herself. David walked beside her. He was no longer young either. Gray touched his temples and experience had carved deep lines into his face, but he had grown into one of the finest diplomats in the galaxy. Some said he would be the one elected today. He had earned it. "Nervous?" asked him. David laughed, terrified, though not as terrified as I was the day you walked out of this chamber. "You've come a long way since then." "We all have." They entered the grand chamber together. It was packed with delegates from every member species of the Compact. Humans sat among, and hundreds of others. There were no sections separated by species anymore. Everyone sat together, mixed and mingled as equals. Made her way to the central platform. The crowd grew quiet as she prepared to speak. 10 years ago," she began, I stood in this chamber and told the old powers that humanity was leaving. I told them they had made a mistake in treating us with contempt. I told them the universe would tremble. She paused, looking out at the thousands of faces watching her. I was wrong about many things that day. I thought we would stand alone against enemies who outnumbered us 1,000 to 1. I thought we would have to fight our way to survival through blood and fire. I thought the galaxy would resist change with everything it had. She smiled softly. Instead, we found friends everywhere we looked. Species who had suffered in silence for centuries came forward to join us. Former enemies became allies. Ancient hatreds began to heal. The galaxy did not resist change. It embraced it. The chamber was completely silent. Every being present knew they were witnessing history. When I was young, I believed that strength was about weapons and ships and armies. I believed that the strong dominated the weak because that was the natural order of things. The conquered taught me that lesson for 20 years. Shook her head slowly. Humanity proved that lesson wrong. True strength is not about domination. True strength is about lifting others up instead of pushing them down. True strength is about building communities instead of empires. True strength is about having the power to destroy your enemies and choosing mercy instead. She looked at the diverse assembly before her. Species that had been enemies for now sat as friends. Children of former slaves played with children of former masters. The old wounds were healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but healing. I am stepping down today. The Compact will choose a new leader, hopefully one wiser than me. But before I go, I want to share one final thought. His voice grew stronger, filled with an emotion she rarely showed. The galaxy is watching us. They watched when we left the negotiation table. They watched when we defeated the battle swarm. They watched when we chose to build rather than conquer. They are watching still. She raised her head high. What they see matters. Every act of kindness we perform shows the galaxy that power does not require cruelty. Every fair treaty we sign proves that cooperation is better than exploitation. Every child we educate from every species teaches the next generation that the old ways are gone forever. Stepped back from the platform, her part was done, her work was finished. The universe trembled when humanity stood up. Now it is time for the universe to heal. Thank you for allowing me to serve. Thank you for believing that things could be better. Thank you for proving that hope is stronger than fear. The chamber exploded in applause, not just for but for everything she represented, for everything they had built together. In the shadows at the edge of the chamber, a figure watched in silence. It was an emissary, the same one who had spoken to in the hallway 10 years ago. Its massive form was hidden behind columns, its presence known to only a few. They had emerged from their isolation 3 years ago. They had watched the new Terran Compact grow. They had studied its principles and practices, and slowly, reluctantly, they had begun to understand. For 10 million years, they had believed that power was the only thing that mattered. They had built their empire on fear and control. They had crushed rebellions without mercy and absorbed weaker species without thought. They had believed this was wisdom. The humans had shown them otherwise. The emissary moved through the chamber after the ceremony, seeking out. It found her standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars she had fought so hard to change. Secretary General, they said. Its voice was like distant thunder. Turned, she showed no fear, only calm recognition. Ambassador, I wondered if you would come. We have watched, they said. We have seen what you built. And what do you think of it? The ancient being was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was something new in its voice, something that might have been humility. We have existed for 10 million years. We have seen species rise and fall like waves upon a shore. We believed we understood the nature of the universe. We believed we knew all there was to know about power and survival. It moved closer too, its massive form blocking out the starlight. You have taught us that we were wrong, not through war, not through threats, through example. You showed us that strength without wisdom is hollow, that power without compassion is poison, that the universe can be more than an endless competition for survival. Listened in silence. This was more than she had ever expected. The wish to join the compact, the emissary said, not as rulers, not as elders demanding special treatment, as members, as equals, as students willing to learn new ways. Felt tears forming in her eyes, she blinked them away. You understand what that means. No more special privileges, no more ancient rights. You would be one voice among hundreds. We understand. The lowered its massive body, the closest thing to a bow its species could manage. You have shown us that one voice among hundreds, raised in friendship, is worth more than the loudest shout of a tyrant. Reached out and touched this form. It was the first time in recorded history that a human had touched in peace. Welcome to the compact, she said. Welcome to the future. 1 year later, retired to a small cottage on one of the colony worlds. The planet she had fought to save had become a garden paradise. Forests covered the lands that had once been barren rock. Oceans sparkled under skies that human engineers had painted blue. She spent her final years writing, not histories or political documents, but stories. Stories about the journey humanity had taken. Stories about the friends they had made along the way. Stories about the universe they had helped to heal. Children from a dozen species visited her often. They sat at her feet and listened to tales of the old days. They could not imagine a galaxy ruled by fear. They had grown up in a universe where different species worked together, where strength protected the weak, where hope was more powerful than hate. That was greatest victory, not the treaties she had signed or the speeches she had given, but the children who would never know the darkness she had fought against. She died peacefully at the age of 78, surrounded by friends from across the galaxy. Her last words were simple. We did good. On Earth, they built a statue in her honor. It showed her at the moment she turned her back on the conquered, straight-backed, defiant, full of cold fire. The inscription at its base read, They told us to kneel. We chose to stand. And the universe trembled not from our strength but from our conviction. But on the world where she had lived her final years, the people built something different. They planted a garden in her name, a garden where children of every species came to play, to learn, to grow. That garden still exists today. It has spread across the entire planet. Some say it will spread across the galaxy someday, a living memorial to a woman who believed that the universe could be better. And she was right. The universe had trembled when humanity left the negotiation table. But in the end, it had not trembled from fear. It had trembled with hope. And hope, as the humans had taught the galaxy, was the most powerful force in existence.